Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Debra Eckerling, author of Your Goal Guide and creator of the Deb Method. I'm all about goal setting simplified and figuring out what you want and making plans to turn into reality. You can't reach your goals on your own. You need your people. So every Monday, I bring in 3 friends to dive deep into the topic of the week. And then on Thursday, it magically becomes an episode of the Deb Show podcast. So whether you're watching live or the replay or listening to us, we are glad you're here choosing yourself. And today, choosing mindset goals. And I have a wonderful panel today. We've got Dr. Alexander Chriest, who comes to us from our friend Julie Migliacci, who was actually on last week. So hi, Alexander. Thank you, Julie. Also, Jess Dewell, who I need to shout out to Pamela Barraway, because we met through the magic of LinkedIn a couple years ago. And it seems really strange that I've only known you a couple years, because we hang out. We're like friend people. Yeah. And I have another friend people here as well, Rachael Wolff, who's another Mango author and all around awesome person. And we're talking about mindsets. So it's February and it's, mind, body, spirit, or rather in terms of my Goal Chat Live land, we're talking mindset this week. And the next week is heart-centered and then taking care of your body. So we're all about February being good to ourselves. And I think it starts with mindset. So I'm really thrilled to have you all here today. And I'm going to give you an opportunity now to introduce yourselves. So Alexander, let's start with you. Please just share who you are, why you're here, and why mindset as a topic really speaks to you.
All right. Thank you, Debra. My name is Dr. Alexander Chriest. I am the co-founder of Impact Human Performance. And what we do is partner with organizations to help people show up as their best more often. I think that really segues into why I'm here. I think it's a very good fit in terms of what you're doing, Debra, and what we're doing. And my background's a little scattered. I never knew what I wanted to do, but my master's in exercise physiology, went that route, thought I wanted to work with athletes, and started to realize as I was doing the physical side of things, there was such a strong connection between the mind and the body. And that's when I went back to school and got my doctorate in educational psychology, focused in resilience, perseverance, and motivation. And at the end of the day, it's just really, it boils down to mindset. The stories we tell ourselves really drive almost everything we do in our lives. So I think when Julie introduced us and had the opportunity to talk about mindset, I was all in. So I'm very excited for this opportunity. I'm based in Denver, so I guess that's all for me.
Excellent. And really glad you're here. And I met Julie at the right time. So I met you at the right time. And here we are. So awesome. Jess, great to see you. Welcome, welcome.
Thanks so much. I always enjoy coming and having conversations. Not only am I really excited about being here with you, Deb, I am really grateful for the opportunity to spend time with Dr. Alexander and Rachael today. So mindset's really interesting. And I don't remember what we were talking about when you said, yes, this is the show you're going to be on next. What I remember as I was preparing, though, was it's interesting how we think that mindset has to last all the time, and that we could have different mindsets for different times. And that's kind of the perspective that maybe I will bring today, unless something else fun and exciting shows up and we swirl that direction and go from there. So at Red Direction, we're working with leadership teams to solve big growth problems, and doing it in a way that really is timely with the resources that are available at hand. And mindset plays a big role in having the confidence with which to be there, be all in with whatever all in actually means in those moments.
Amazing. And I keep thinking about that famous quote, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Yes, you're right. And that really boils down to it in this conversation. Rachael.
Hi.
Love seeing you. Thank you for joining.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me. And I am as well very grateful to be here in the presence of all of you and get to have this conversation because it's my favorite subject. I wrote the book Letters from a Better Me. So all about shifting the mindset from what was once my prison to my power. So it's a big, huge part of what I do and what I write about. I write the From a Loving Place blog and have a podcast, From a Loving Place, with author Rachael Wolff, where I actually run a series called Seeds of Wisdom, where I get to interview people like Deb, who was just on last week, and we get to dig deep into subject matter that helps other people grow. So.
And it was, well, when I set up these shows, I start with, the theme of the month and the topics. And then you reached out and said, can I interview you? And I said, great. Want to come back on Gold Chat Live? So I love how the universe brings us the right people at the right time. And the same thing with Dr. Alexander. I had just met Julie a few weeks ago through another person. Last week was on networking and, tying all the connections together. But I love the way the universal mind works, where people are brought to you for a purpose. And I think that kind of ties in to mindset as well. And you need to be open and you need to be clear and ... So before we jump in, if you're watching live, it's really great to see you. If you're watching the replay, please comment and tell us how you feel about mindset, where you are. We do have Alan Hennessy, who's watching live in Ireland. So thank you for staying up late, because it's 12 a.m. over there. And I hope tomorrow is doing really well for you. Because we can live in today's mind, tomorrow's mind, or the mindset of everything. And what is mindset? Let's start with that softball, because I think we have to start there. Alexander, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, it's, it can be defined a number of different ways. I think we really try to simplify it. And I promise I only have one pun during this series, but it's really the idea that mindset is not set. And it really is. It's a collection of the stories we tell ourselves. And the more we tell ourselves stories, regardless of what it may be, they start to become our identity. They become a belief and then an identity. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, even with all the research. And I think, all of us would probably agree that it can be changed, but so many people just believe that it's fixed and this is the way it is, so it's always going to be that way. And we hear the stories all the time. I'm too old to change. This is the way it's always been. I was raised a certain way. This is just the way it is. And we just need to be intentional in how we start paying attention to the stories we tell ourselves, because they really do form into, like I said, those beliefs, which become an identity. And once it's our identity, it makes it a lot more challenging to change.
Absolutely. And one of my big things, with the Deb method, it's all about foundational. You can't get what you want unless you know what that is. But the purpose is to help people embrace change by choice or by circumstance. And I really think the mindset shift really comes to play there as well. The way in which you approach change, or decide that you want something different than what's always been there. And Rachael, I know you have things to say, probably a little bit similar to Alexander, on what is mindset. So
yeah, I completely agree. I mean, because it really is about perspectives that turn into beliefs. It's what we're thinking that turns into the belief, and it can be, our perspectives can be our power or a prison. So we are our problem or our solution. It's all mindset. And and like he was saying, mindset can change. It's not anything that is permanent and fixed. We just have to change the stories we're telling yourself and understand that we empower ourselves or disempower ourselves. And that's what being able to work with your mindset is about, is understanding the difference, that it's our choice. Nobody can make us act a certain way. Nobody can make us believe a certain way. Nobody can make us feel a certain way. We have to take our power back in order to put our mindset in the right direction to go actually and align our energy, because we can lie to ourselves with our words all the time. That's about that, sometimes with the positive thinking, that's just words that we're trying to tell ourselves, where the mindset is connecting the energy with the words to go in either
I love everything you just said. The thing that really stuck out for me is we empower ourselves or we disempower ourselves. And that's, underline exclamation point. Jess, what do you think?
All I can think of at this moment that may be additive to this is this concept of Stoicism, where when we know who we are and we know what we can and we can't control, then we have the choice with which to show up and recognize that everything is already in us and it's up to us to use it. That's how I would add to the amazing start that Alexander and Rachel gave.
Okay, that's amazing. So what do you think the problem? What is the problem people have? Because mindset, it is a big thing. I mean, it's huge. It really decides on your life. But why is it that some people just get stuck there? Jess?
So, okay, here's what comes to mind. I'm gonna be a resource puller today. In the realm, I receive chiropractic care from a particular kind of chiropractic lineage called network. The network chiropractic care, NSA or NS, I don't remember what the current initials are. The doctors that practice this are learning how to use energy. And they talk about, in my experience directly, is they take places in my body that's peaceful and remind the places in my body that are stressed that they can also have peace. And this is a practice with which we use. And this is coming up for me because of something that Rachel said. When Rachel talks about disempowering or empowering through whatever we've got going on, there is actually a way to breathe, to move energy to the point where I have no choice but to take my power back. So I have it to transform and use it as fuel for what is next. And I know that there are a ton of breathing, somatic related exercises out there. And that's also coming to mind for me in this moment of, well, it's more than what's between our ears. And can we accept it and embrace it and bring it in? Because the messier it is, the more real it is. And we actually have greatness with which to work.
Wow. Okay. And you just blew my mind because yesterday I can tell you why. Yesterday, I cleaned my office, long overdue, and I had 2 breathing CDs. Have to figure out how to play them because I can't really drive and do that. But it's taking control and directing your energy, right?
It is. And you can see it. Think about a toddler who's teething. Anybody that has been around a toddler who's teething, and this is actually the take my power back thing that you practice when you really want to do this. What do? They walk around and their face is all squished up and they're almost pounding themselves around and they're moving, and it's this concept. And as soon as you feel that in your own self, in that self within, it's like, oh, something is tapping you on the shoulder that's saying there's some power here with which to grab. Are you willing to do something different to access it?
It's all about doing different.
Yeah. I don't know if it's on your CDs, but there's a small example.
So, Alexander, what do you think?
No, I love that, Jess. And it just made me think of, there's just a little thing I always goes through my head. It's where our energy flows. It's where our attention goes. And it's, the more I think about it, the more it's like when you get a new car. If you get a new car, you never see that car anywhere. And as soon as you get that new car, everyone has it because it's just what you're focusing on. And I think that's the interesting thing about storytelling and mindset is once you flip the switch and you start seeing it, it's amazing. It's so easy to see in other people. It's things that we maybe call excuses or the stories we tell ourselves. And they can really, all the things we talked about is just kind of our power, our prison. It's really sometimes easier to see in other people, and then it's harder to reflect on ourselves and what are the stories that are holding us back. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, and I just remember having like this mindset that it was like how much money you made, and if you made X amount of dollars, then you would be fulfilled or whatever it looked like. And then you get there, and it's just a number. And we talked earlier when we were kind of setting up about job titles and how we sometimes chase these titles. And I can remember a situation where I was working for a hospital system and I was teaching programs in the health and wellness space. And I was applying to be an education manager. And I was so excited. I was like, I want to be this education manager. I put all this energy and focus into this, thinking once I get this, then I'll be complete, or then I'll be the person I want to be. And I finally got it. And I remember going through leadership training that was aligned with that job right after. And the program was all about how you don't want to be a manager, you want to be a leader. And here I am for the last 6 months wanting to become this manager. And then as soon as I was told you don't want to be that, like my identity was just kind of shattered for a bit. So it's really how we can kind of step back and just, I mean, in terms of job titles, don't let that define what you do. Because if we ask people in any of our programs, what do you do? The first, I'd say 99% of the time, someone will say their job title, but not deeper than that. And if we can kind of shift the mindset on that, it gives us the ability to kind of persevere better if we lose our job, if we lose that title. You know, and I think of it like my job title now is Chief Content Officer, but I like to think of what I do is helping simplify complex research into ways that people can bring into their everyday lives so they can show up as their best more often. And that's something I can do regardless of my job title or where I am or what I'm doing.
I love this digression. So I'm going to pose that question to Jess and Rachael, which is, so who are you, Rachael? How do you identify?
So how do I identify? You know, I'm me. I mean, because for me, that took me so long to get to, that I am okay with being me, and everything else is just something I do. I run a place, you know, all of what I do is related to living life from a loving place, not always a positive place, but from a place of self-love out, projected love out. To tie in what both Alexander and Jess were saying, for me, it's about aligning my energy. And I spent a year doing a blog that every day I went on to daily align with love, abundance, and peace. And that is over fear, lack, and separation. Because I was noticing what was happening when the stories that come from the energy of fear and the energy of lack and the energy of separation were doing to me, because I was focusing on them too much. Because what we put our energy into, we get back. And then, you know, and part of that explanation of me is it's hard for me now to want to define myself in any other way, because one of the biggest things I learned was if I put my worth outside of myself, I become a prisoner of my mindset. I become a prisoner of my perspective. If I put my worth anywhere outside of myself, if I put it in a partner, in being a parent, in being an employee, in being a leader, like Alexander was saying, when that crashes and when something changes, I don't want to fall with it anymore. I fell with that one too many times and it freaking hurts. That's my PG-13 version.
Love it. You put your worth outside of yourself, you crash, you fall, which is why we need that cushion of mindset, of knowing who we are, what we do. Jess, do you have a quick who you are statement to share?
Yeah, whatever I say right now will officially be out of date in the next moment. And that's the way that I show up in the world. As curious as I am and whatever intentions I bring, ultimately it's around curiosity, because there is something for me to learn, something for me to take away, and more importantly, a way for me to be of service that as soon as I decide who I am, limits my ability to be of that service.
Ooh, we're getting all deep now.
I love that.
I do too. I want to quickly give a shout out to Carolyn Howard Johnson, who's watching us live. Carolyn, great to see you. I love my Carolyn story. We met in person after being on. No, I've known her, I think 10, 15 years, but we became friends online first before we met in person. So I love that you're here enjoying this conversation. And then John Chen popped in to call it the reticular activating system, where we see only stuff that's important to us, which is, we've got a lot of vivid nodding on the panel. This is great. So we need to be confident in who we are. We need to tell ourselves things that enrich us. So how do we fix people who don't do that? What do we need to do, and how do we get that healthy growth mindset? Let's call it that, shall we? Rachel.
The thing is a person has to realize nobody else can fix them. They have to do the work themselves. I mean, that's the biggest thing. If you are not going to show up to do the work, nothing will change. And you see it every day in therapy and all these things. People will keep going out to these things and expecting other people to do the work for them. But if they don't go back and actually not just connect to it, but absorb the work and start living it, it won't work. So for me, a big thing that I'm doing right now is energy work. I've been working with energy psychology and work with Donna Eden's work, where it's about aligning your energy and doing actual physical movements to connect the body, the mind, that your energy system, so that it helps, because it all works together. And if you have to understand, you can't disconnect yourself. The body, the mind, the spirit all work as one. And the second you try to separate them, you'll sabotage, you're going to sabotage the more you don't embrace the whole.
When you disconnect the parts, it's sabotage. It's like not fixing one part of your car. The car's not going to work.
Yeah. Well, and I just want to give a brief example real quick. That I use weight loss, because I see this all the time with people trying to lose weight. And if you are working against yourself by saying, I look horrible, I don't like the way I'm look. I'm going to lose weight because I want to look better. And because if I lose weight, this is what's going to happen from what other people are going to see you as. That's expecting something outside of you to change the inside, and it won't work. You will self-sabotage what you're doing. If you come to it as a whole, from a whole place of loving yourself enough to take care of your body one step at a time, whatever that looks like, the weight loss is actually more natural, and you'll be led to food that is better for you. You will, you know what I mean? You'll be led to things that are better for you in that way, because that's where your mind is. It's on what you actually want, which is to be and live healthy. So I see a lot of self-sabotage there. That's why I brought that one up.
And I think it's a great example. And the reason why I'm really like nodding, for those who are listening, I am nodding. Because in Deb, it starts with determine your mission. You have to know what's the thing that's driving you, so all the parts work together. Right?
So important. Mm-hmm.
Right. Alexander, did you want to chime in here?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I think I'm hurting my neck from nodding so much, because I don't think there's any challenging going on here, but it really is just going back to how people kind of adopt that growth mindset. And I think, like Rachel said, number one is they have to be willing to put in the work. And I think so often it's easy to see when other people you tend to see it in other people or yourself when you start blaming other people, other situations, your environment. And I mean, it is like a light switch. Like once you start noticing it, it's amazing when you can start to tell, like, well, this is me just being in my, I'm going down my negative path. And we start to, if we can start to pay attention to it, it's bringing that awareness. And we have something, an activity we do, like we have this concept of best self. So kind of like step one of finding our mission or purpose, Debra. And the simplest way we think of this is like what 3 words would you use to describe you at your best? When you feel like all your energy is flowing, aligned. And for me, I mean, the words can change, but it's typically I'm optimistic, challenge, engaged. And I'm optimistic in the sense that I'm having a realistic outlook, trying to find the best in situations. I'm challenged in the sense like I'm always seeking growth. And I'm engaged in the sense that whatever I'm doing in the moment, I'm focused on that. And we have participants go through this to just first identify what that starts to look like as their best. But then we start to look and say, what, like during times of high stress or low energy, when you're exhausted, you're tired, what's the first word to be compromised? And for me, it's like very quick. It's optimistic. Like it's the first thing I know that goes out the window. And by starting to identify this, I can know when I'm starting to kind of spiral down. It's bringing awareness to it. And the example I always use is I travel a lot for work and I love traveling, but the deboarding process of the plane is the most frustrating moment in my day when I'm traveling. And I find myself going around traveling to teach programs on being your best, living a purpose-filled life. And as the landing gear goes down, I start looking around, picking the people that I think are going to be the ones that barge forward. You know, we all know those people. And it's like I catch myself. Like that's not being optimistic. It's not being who I want to be. So I have kind of prompts in place. So once the landing gear goes down, I start listening to. I have a happy playlist. I'll do some breathing work. I'll start reminding myself, like telling myself a different story. Like it doesn't really matter. You know, change the story. If someone barges up, maybe they're late for a hospital visit, or maybe they have an emergency. And rather than going the negative route, like how can I reframe that? And it's amazing because, like, I mean, since we've been talking about energy, it's an energy drain when we're kind of spiraling down like this. It's amazing how much time and energy we spend kind of dwelling or, you know, putting ourselves as a victim at times. So I like having the identification and having like kind of the warning signs in place. So when I start to go, I have something to get me out of it, to kind of course correct in the moment.
Ooh, that's fun. That is such a useful exercise because I'm not a fan of stress. So I do avoid it as much as humanly possible, right? So, but what do you do when you can't avoid it? If you can, you know, click the switch in your brain so it's not a defense mechanism, it's I love, oh, okay, it's fine, let him go first. And that way I don't have to deal with the stress of that. So
yeah, and what we find is just so many of the stressors that we face on a regular basis are to some extent unavoidable. I mean, no matter where you live, I mean, we talked about it within the first 5 minutes of being on the call is traffic. You know, it's one thing that no matter where you are, everyone claims they have the worst traffic. I don't want to get into a debate about that. But I mean, if traffic is your biggest stressor and you're going to face it in the morning and afternoon if you're a commuter, like what are things you can do to kind of change that situation as opposed to getting worked up every single time you're in traffic?
exactly. I know someone who used to do the workouts by the office because that way there was no rush hour traffic going home. And it's when you can see the problem, you can find the solutions, and then it can change your whole mindset. So, Jess, what is your take on what people could do to rewire when they need to?
Let's look at what we're actually doing. And this is something that I catch myself doing fairly frequently now. And it was very difficult when I started this type of work and this type of exercise. And that is when we look at what we do, we can see what we're actually prioritizing. So to the point with which Rachael and Alexander were chatting about the different things that they were saying, it makes me think, oh, am I willing to do what it takes? And if my actions are putting time and energy away from what I'm saying I want, the answer is no, I don't have it. So that's a place I could spend some time. Or I could say, nope, not right now. Both are okay. And that's something I think we forget. We're supposed to go after these things. We're supposed to be doing these things. We're supposed to be growing. And I'm going to challenge that and say sometimes we're just supposed to recognize we're not. and be okay with it, because the time will come. It means that we're supposed to grow in a different way, not that way. That's really what it means. And so when we recognize that, and then I use values instead of mission. And my 3 values are grace, curiosity, and truth. And so in my action reflection, am I not getting what I want? How come? Oh, I'm prioritizing things. They tend to be out of alignment with the 3 values that I choose to act in to be my best self. And if I'm willing to do what it takes to get there, if I'm willing to make that commitment, then I can find the set of questions. Or if I'm not, then I can find the set of questions. Because in the end, for me, without a pause, without a reflection, without that moment to really anchor in what's going on, all I'm doing is reacting. And I would prefer to come from a place being driven and pulled toward being of service. A pause is almost always necessary to go, well, how do I serve here? Is it actually witnessing? Is it just observing? Is it doing or being?
You hit on something that I think is really important. Well, you all are, but most people, they're just running, like literally all the time. And when you are running all the time, what are you going to accomplish?
A lot of running.
A lot of running. And it's okay if you want to run.
It's okay if that's the goal. Yeah.
But it's not if you want to make changes, if you're running, you need to stop long enough. You need to pause to see what's next and what's meaningful for you and what's in alignment.
And sometimes it's the way we're choosing to live doesn't align with the way we think we're supposed to be. Hint, hint. I know everybody here has something to say about that. And so food for thought, whatever that trigger word is for you, all you're looking for is the gap, because in the pause, that's where we see it. And we can make positive change for us in the moment, which may be no change. It could be a lot of change.
One of the things that I talk about, when you have your mission and motto and it drives you, when you see opportunities, the first thing you say is, okay, is it in alignment with me? If yes, then yes. If no, then ask yourself, is it another benefit? And sometimes it is.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's a not yet. So I really appreciate all the different elements that you're bringing together. And so your words are grace, reflection, and truth.
Close. Grace, curious.
Grace, curiosity.
Curiosity, yep. Mm-hmm.
And truth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we've got optimistic, challenged, and engaged for Alexander. And Rachel, the question's coming.
I would say connection, acceptance, and awareness.
Those are good.
Because
I like those. Why?
Because they all go in. They all go in, and I can only be better if I'm focused on what is within me. And I am better serving others when I'm aligned. So it's that saying, you have to put your oxygen mask on first. We have to take care of ourselves first. And when I'm aware, and that awareness, and Jess brought up this great point of acceptance, accepting where we are when we're there and being okay with that. That's huge. I mean, that's like, people do not give that part enough credit. And I'm so grateful you brought that up, because it is really easy to get caught in the doing. And I've been in this, and just because we all work on this stuff doesn't mean we're perfect at it. And I always like to bring that up, because some people put people who work in the fields of this stuff on pedestals, and nobody belongs on a pedestal. We're all human, living in human experience and learning from it. But I feel like that awareness and acceptance are so big in allowing ourselves to be ourselves, and with accepting and loving it, you know, and getting to that place where we can love it. And through that is where I connect. So I have to have those two in order to connect. And, you know, I just wrote a piece today, what can I do now? Because that's my series right now, is what can I do now? And it was connect with others. It's having these kind of conversations. And I absolutely love it because it always lights me up. I get tingles, I get chills, and I love just being right here. Right here, right now is the only place I need to be.
And that's why I love doing this show, because I get to bring together awesome people to chat, and then we let other people watch. Right? And if you are watching us live or the replay or listening, tell us your 3 words. What are the words that drive you? What do you go back to when you need to get centered? Because it starts with you.
It's a guiding light.
Saying, right?
It is a guiding light. It is that. In my world, I would say that's the little red point of the compass that's always pointing north. So you know your journey is going to take you in all kinds of directions. You're still oriented, though, to be able to eventually get to where you want to go, even if it's backwards.
And sometimes the backwards is what you need to do to move forward. Sometimes you need the space and the pause and the reassessment before you move forward.
And sometimes we got to learn the hard lessons. You know, sometimes it's in those really hard, challenging times where we're brought to our knees that breaks us open. Like I always say, it's the breakdown to break through, because I used to think of it as a bottom. And now if I go, okay, I'm going down. Okay, I'm about to have a big growth spurt here. And so I could see the other side of it, but I know it's a necessary part of my journey to break open, because something was blocking me and it's going to help hit that.
Do you have an example you're comfortable sharing?
Well, I share everything. That's why I wrote the book. But for me, I hit such a bottom. I was in a very toxic relationship for 10 years. It took me of being in a very toxic relationship. And it was one argument where I just heard this inner voice say in me, this is not love. And it got me to break down, break open, redefine love and how I was seeing love, because I was confusing love with fear. I did not know the real definition of love. I was just lost in it. And I realized that my self-abuse, by the way I talk to myself, which is a huge part of mindset, if we're self-abusing, we attract that to our lives. And I was doing that. And so I had to shift and change out of that, because I had to figure out that if I didn't fix the way I talked to myself and showed myself love and respect, I wasn't going to get it in a relationship. And so that was like a huge breakdown to break through, which is what led me to do all the work that I do from a loving place.
Amazing. And that is really your motto, you know, from that loving place.
Yep.
Alexander.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the other thing too is, I mean, you both kind of hit on it with saying that sometimes because we, you know, do this for a living and we talk about this all the time, that it comes easy. Like, I think the things that may look from the outside come easy is because of the hard work we do behind the scenes, but also knowing, like, with growth, like when you hit those, we'll call it valleys or low points, like it might be easy now to look back and be like, wow, that was an amazing opportunity for growth. But in the moment it sucks. You know, like it's not easy. It's like, and it's okay. And I think that's the other thing that just sometimes gets lost, that, you know, in the moment it's like, oh, I'm growing. But, you know, sometimes those days are tough. Those weeks are tough. Those months are tough. I think sometimes just having that, like Jess said, like that compass pointing, like that North Star can help kind of weather the storm. Doesn't mean it's an easy storm to weather, but if you have that, you know it's for a greater good, you know it's going to get you to where you want to be, can really kind of help. Because there are those days you just want to stay in bed, not move, not get out. But like you said, sometimes doing nothing is what you need to do to move forward. Like taking that pause or that recovery from whatever it is that you're doing or going through.
sometimes doing nothing is what you need to do. Absolutely. Jess, did you want to add to this? I bet you do.
There's so many things. Personally, just last year, I actually was evaluating a product that we had just launched because I had given it a timetable, and we were coming up on the end of the timetable, and it was either successful or it wasn't, and it was going to go or it was not. Turns out that kind of thinking was great up until the point with which it became clear that it wasn't where it needed to be, yet it was the right thing to be doing. And so with that thought, I had to come up with a better question and look around what we were doing and what we were offering and the way we were talking about things at Red Direction. And we purged so much that we had somehow it was dangling out. It was like an overgrown tree or an apple tree that nobody ever picked the apples from, is really what it was like. And so we spent the entire year evaluating and going through those things, and it made space for different results with this product that I had just said, boop, black or white, here we go, yes or no, go, no go, all of that. And so when we're willing to bend our reality a little bit, it's important. And the only reason I was able to see it was because I was able to get out of my own way and recognize where I was not growing and hear those around me who had insight. And so to the point of the conversation, happening right now in a team, the way these guiding words could do nothing more than say, well, here's who I am, and here's what it looks like, sounds like, and feels like when I am at work, when I am at my house with the people I live with, when I am in one or more of my communities, because the dynamics of everybody else also matter. And sometimes we can't meet people where they're at, but we can recognize they're not where we are, and we can still navigate a good, productive conversation for the benefit of more than just ourselves or that person when we're willing to take a chance. And so amongst all of this is when we know where we are, we can better hear other people who aren't where we are. And those are the voices that can give us the biggest change, the biggest opportunity, the biggest reflection, the biggest whatever you want it to be, to just see differently.
Agreed. And so many people take that for granted. And I think Rachael is one with me on this. The whole writing everything down so you can see your reality is such. I know. I feel like
those of you listening, I'm going to just interrupt right here and say, look, these are my notes just from the conversation that we've had so far today. Mm-hmm. Oh, see?
Yes. Let's all raise our notebooks on the count of 3. There's in my methodology, there's so much writing because you can't get out of your head. You need to get out of your head in order to figure things out. And you also need to know where you're coming from in order for other conversations to be productive. And I like the little curvy U-turn because we're talking a lot about mindset for the benefit of who we are as people. But I like that you brought in the professional realm as well. Mindset isn't just, I'm going to sound, I know, it's not all touchy-feely California-y things, right? I love California. I'm an Angelino. I can say this. But it's mindset it's everything, because your personal life impacts your professional life. Your professional life impacts your personal life. But what are other ways that we can use mindset when working as a team or in an office? Alexander?
I'm first, huh?
Yeah, you get to be first. Well, actually, Jess was first. That makes you second.
Okay. Second. It's so much easier. Less pressure. The story I'm telling myself is there's a lot of pressure going first. I think a lot goes back to, and just it's been something I've wanted to kind of say all night, and also just the fact that, like, we have our own stories, but there's also stories that we tell ourselves about society, about life, about who we need to be. And I think that was one that you have to understand, that when you're on a team, everyone has these different stories. And for me, I don't know where they came from. I mean, they may have come from my my parents, my teachers, my upbringing, whatever it looks like. But I just had this mindset from the early age. I was supposed to graduate, go to college, then get a job, start saving for retirement, have a family, or get married, have a family. Like there was like this checklist. And I remember just being so fixed on this that when things didn't go my way, it was like a crisis. And I remember like I transferred around my undergrad and graduated 2 years late by, whatever norms I'm paying attention to. So I was 24 when I graduated. And I remember just having this dissonance that I was 2 years behind on my retirement on this. And it took almost throughout my 20s to kind of break away from that and understand that like it doesn't have to be a perfect, like we don't have to have this thing figured out. And Jess, I keep going back. I've written it down several times, just being curious and bringing curiosity to the table and just understanding that like our lives are dynamic. But when we work as a team, we've all had different experiences, different stories that have led to our beliefs, that have led to our identities. So we all might see things from a different perspective, which going back to Jess once again is why it's so important to listen, because we all have different perspectives and that can really help. And I think that's the biggest thing I try to do is just, even if I think I know the answer, like bite my tongue and listen.
Until it hurts sometimes, I know.
Yeah, it's all sometimes I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. There's sometimes I do a good job.
I'll speak up to that one. That's such a great that is such a great addition. Thanks.
And I'm going through thinking, because in high school you do the family living class where you're supposed to map out your life. Mine is nothing like that path, but if it was, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be able, we're all on the planet for a purpose. Some of us are a little bit more aware that we have purpose than others. I feel like I'm one of those people, but we're here to do great things. We're here to make our lives better and to improve the lives of others around us, which is why we, the four of us and a lot of people who come on this show, we're here to help. And it's a gift. And it's okay that we have the detours, because if we didn't have the detours, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. We all win. So Rachael.
So speaking of that, because this is kind of leads into it, talking about detours. So right out of high school, won awards, got scholarships, wanted to go to this special program, only accepted 100 people a year, and I didn't have the money to go. So I was devastated. And instead of sitting in that, I was like, okay, well, what do I really want to do? And for me, I love traveling. I love doing that and helping people. And at the time, I was very good at retail. And so I crafted a position for myself. I started in a customer service on a phone, and then I crafted this position for myself, seeing that the industry that I was in didn't teach people how to actively sell the products in it was indoor tanning salons. They weren't showing them how to translate that into retail sales and how to build the team to work together for that. So I literally crafted a position out of nothing and became the sales trainer for the entire industry from that. So I would travel all over the US and Canada in all my 20s and would go into these salons and be able to look at the salon and see what the breakdowns were. And one of the things I notice when it comes to working with teams is, one, the feeling that somebody has to be right, like that feeling of having to be right, instead of seeing things as perspectives. And that's one of the things I would always try to bring in. It's a perspective. We're just seeing other people's perspectives, because that way it opens the floor up a little bit more for more communication, so people can get their opinions and their things in and then look at them all together without feeling like they're going to be cut off. Then the other thing that I noticed with working with the teams is, it's really important to ask more questions when you have a judgment running through your mind. because it's so easy. Like they were saying, it's easy because we're all coming from different places to just judge that we know something that we don't know. So asking questions and trying to find out why they believe the way they do, so that we can find a solution or a compromise in that. If people aren't feeling seen and heard, that's going to be a problem in a team. That's going to create the team dynamic to go down, because once that energy's in there that people can't feel seen and heard, that energy spreads. So it's about giving the voice to the people, and lifting up, communicating, and really trying to work with a mindset that has that common goal. What's your common goal? And work to lift that up and make sure that people are contributing to that. And if they're not, it's managers, leaders' decision to say, how do they lift them up, or do they belong in this team? And it's not about them being a bad person. It just, do they fit the team?
And yes, and communication, that's like, it's huge.
Yeah.
It is, when you've got communication skills, when you're able to listen and hear and talk and articulate, then the world is yours.
Yeah. And that's and even with sales, like being in sales, I wanted to know what people were wanting. If someone's going to a tanning salon, they're not going to look like Magna from There's Something About Mary. You know what I mean? They're not going to look all dried out. They're looking because they want to look better. So they have to take care of their skin. You're selling things for their skin. It's like making those connections with people to help them. It's about helping each other, helping the customer, but knowing that bigger goal of whatever your goal of your company is, to all figure out your own, what makes you good at this. And it's about also knowing who your brainstormers are, who your completers are, who your finishers are, and using their skills that people have. And listening is what gets us to know what people's best skills are. So that's also a really important thing to know, is like helping people find those and highlight them.
And so bringing it back to mindset, when you know who you are, what drives you, your words, what triggers you, what you need to stay away from, what your gifts are. These are all things that you bring to bigger conversations, to teams, to work, to your clients, to make the world a better place. The end. See, I'm all about goal setting simplified, so I like wrapping things up in a nice little bow. But it's all the things, but it's mostly just knowing who you are and being the best version as much of the time as you can. That being said, transition. What I would love now is for all of you to gift a goal to the audience, something that they can do today, tonight, tomorrow, to really, I don't want to say fix their mindset, but to really help them gain the mindset that they need to move forward in whatever it is. So yeah, that was much better than the other path. Jess, can we start with you? Do you have a goal to gift? I know you do.
There's so many things I want to share. I'm going to go back to where I started, which was the definition of Stoicism at the beginning, or a definition from the view of this person right here out to the world in our conversation. I'm a big fan of Ryan Holiday and thedailystoic.com. And so one of the things that I have learned and I care very much about considering is the 4 virtues of Stoicism, which are courage, temperance, justice, and wisdom. And when I think of those and I think about the conversation today, it makes me realize all of us here were taking notes. So my gift of a goal today would be, will you sit down and write 3 sentences about something bigger than yourself and how you fit in that today? Can you look in the way of, did I have the courage I needed? Did I have the temperance that I could have had? Am I bringing whatever I need to be bringing to this so that I can be myself without taking over, interfering influencing all of that wonderful goodness that we're really great at as humans. And the reason, and then I'll leave you with this, because it's actually a quote about taking the view from above. And when we journal and we think about all the pieces that are coming together, we can simultaneously see how small we are in the grand scheme of things and how important the actions we choose to take and how we show up are. So journal it, people, journal it.
Whenever journaling is a bonus goal, I'm a fan. So to write 3 sentences about something bigger than yourself and see how you fit into that world, is that?
That something's going on and see all of the parts that are coming into play that makes you so small, and the way that in your smallness you can actually make an impact and be of the highest good.
Love it.
Maybe 3 sentences of each. We might I don't know if you could do all of that in 3 sentences, but hey, that'd be a cool challenge.
Well, I think we also all know the thing. As you're saying this, I'm going to guess that most of the people listening are like, oh, they know the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that so much. Thank you. Rachel, what is your goal?
I'm going to add to the writing.
I was thinking you might.
But just simply by looking at what can I do right now? Not in 5 minutes. What can I do right now? Can I go on YouTube and look up an energy work video? Can I write out what Jess just said? Is it that I can meditate? Is it looking at the way I'm talking to myself and just being aware of how I'm talking to myself? Whatever it is, do it right now. Don't wait. Don't procrastinate it, but do something. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It could be, if you want to live healthier, go eat something healthy right now. Not forever, just right now. And that sets a momentum. And that's what mindset's about, is building on the momentum of the energy that we're starting to contribute. So if you can look at those things to do right now, you can write that journal right now. And I have a feeling with whatever Alexander says, you're going to be able to do that too. So it's about taking something and just connecting to it and doing it now. Don't wait.
Amazing. And Alexander, how are you going to add to this? Because Rachel teed you up beautifully.
I know, I'm sorry.
So I want to think future, not right now, but what you can, no, I'm just kidding. I think the biggest thing is just trying to think about how, I think we've almost programmed into this like light switch mentality, like yes, no, right, wrong, pass, fail, good, bad. And I like the analogy of a dial. You know, if you're looking to make progress, like what's a 10 look like? What's a 0 look like? And how can we just be a 1? You know, if I'm trying to move more throughout the day, you know, a 10 might be I'm walking 3 miles, 5 miles a day, or 3 or 5 miles a day. Maybe a 1 is just parking further away and just doing a little bit. I think so often we have these days, or, you know, or nutrition's an easy one too. It's like, well, I had a bad meal, so I was bad. You know, and I think of like, what's the smallest thing you can do to kind of have a win? You know, if I'm going and having a burger, fries, and beer, maybe the win for that day is just leaving 3 fries on the plate. It's not major, but it's something. And it's just helping us kind of move forward. And I think Jess and Rachel both said, like, what are the small steps we can do to continue to move forward? And I think of it in terms of mindset, like how often do we let a bad 5 minutes kind of dictate and drive the rest of our day? So maybe just ask yourself in the moment, Rachel, am I having a bad day, or am I letting a bad 5 minutes kind of control how I view the rest of my day?
First of all, I love how leaving 3 French fries on the table is a win. Food always ends up in these conversations somehow, and I think that's just the perfect way to fit it in. It can be so little. I talk about keeping a win journal a lot, and I was talking to a client today, and I'm like, are you writing down a win a day, or 1 to 3 wins a day? And she said, I'm doing 1. I said, 1 is great. Let's do 2. or some days you could do 3 and then you can get away with 1. But finding those little wins, they make up big wins. And that's what motivates you to keep moving forward. And in terms of mindset, what the entire conversation is about is what can you do? What do you need to do to be self-aware, to see where your triggers are, what you need to do to alter the switch, the dial into your life. So, this is such a great conversation. I'm really sorry that it's that we're wrapping up. But before we wrap, will you friends please share where people can find you? Alexander, where's the best way for people to
right now I
with
think
you?
like LinkedIn or Instagram are my two. So if you just find Alexander Chriest, they're both there. And also our company, Impact Human Performance, is there as well. So LinkedIn, Instagram, our website.
And if you go to thedebmethod.com/blog, you can get the recap and some of the quick hits from the conversation, and also get the links to where you can find these amazing people. And Jess, where can people find you?
Go out in the world and search reddirection.com. You can also tap into our podcast anywhere that you listen and just search for the Bold Business Podcast.
Awesome. And Rachel, where can people learn more about you?
You can always find me at From a Loving Place. So From a Loving Place Facebook, From a Loving Place Instagram, From a Loving Place .com, and on the From a Loving Place with author Rachael Wolff podcast. And then I'm also on LinkedIn under my name.
And I love the branding. I am at the Deb Method everywhere, and I will have everybody's LinkedIn links in the show notes as well. Well, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I would love to leave everybody with a final thought. So, and yes, Alexander, you get to go first this time. What final thought would you like to leave everybody with?
Yeah, I think just no step is too small. Like as long as even if you're just reflecting, like it doesn't mean you're moving forward, but sometimes just acknowledging can be the first step. I think we get caught up just trying to, if we're not, like I think Jess or Rachel said it, like sometimes we put too much pressure on ourselves to constantly be growing, constantly being our best self. Like at the end of the day, we're just striving to be a little bit better each day. And some days are going to be maybe a 10, maybe some days will be a 1. So just find those small wins.
It's the dial. It's not the switch. Love it.
Yes.
Rachel, what final thought do you have?
Trust wherever you are. Trust that if you are watching this here and you're listening to it and you're getting stuff out of it, that's exactly where you're meant to be. It's trusting the process, because everything that we absorb is a step. So trusting that shift, allow the shift.
Awesome. And Jess, final thought?
Don't forget to pause. That stop piece is incredibly important, even if it's a microsecond before we continue a conversation, even if it's before we hit the join button virtually, even if it's before we get out of the car. Some of us, it's when we get in the car. Wherever the pauses happen, take them. And the more pauses you take, the more time you actually get.
Ooh, there's that math again.
I know.
Right? Sometimes
exactly
math
right.
is your friend. And it is when it comes to pausing, hitting the dial, and maybe counting to 10, trying to put everything together, right? Thank you so much, Dr. Alexander Chriest and Jess Dewell and Rachael Wolff, for this wonderful conversation on mindset. And whether you're listening or watching live or the replay or listening, thank you for choosing yourself and mindset. This has been so much fun. I feel like really good energy. This is what I love about these conversations. So if you're thinking about what it is you can do for your mindset, you now have mindset goals. So go on out there and go for it. And we know you can do it. Thanks, everyone.